Kadisha Valley, also romanized as the Kadisha Valley and also known as the Kadisha Gorge or Wadi Kadisha, is a gorge that lies within the Becharre and Zgharta Districts of the North Governorate of Lebanon. The valley was carved by the Kadisha River, also known as the Nahr Abu Ali, when it reaches Tripoli. Kadisha means holy in Aramaic, and the valley, sometimes called the Holy Valley, it has sheltered Christian monastic communities for many centuries. The valley is located at the foot of Mount al-Makmal in northern Lebanon. The integrity of the valley is at risk due to encroachment of human settlements, illegal building and inconsistent conservation activity. Although it is not yet on the UNESCO in danger list, there have been warnings that continued violations may lead to this step. Geography. The Holy River, Nahr Kadisha, runs through the valley for 35 kilometers from its source in a cave a little way below the Forest of the Cedars of God. The sides of the valley are steep cliffs that contain many caves, often at more than 1,000 meters and all difficult of access. The most scenic section of the valley stretches for approximately 20 kilometers between Becharre, the hometown of Khalil Gibran, and Turtsa. It is here also that the Holy River, Nahr Kadisha, flows, its source being in a sacred mountain celebrated in the scriptures, the Cedars of God. The Kadisha Valley is near the Forest of the Cedars of God, survivors of the ancient cedars of Lebanon, the most highly prized building materials of the ancient world. The forest is said to contain 375 individual trees, 2 claimed to be over 3,000 years old, 10 over 1,000 years, and the remainder at least centuries old. The Lebanon cedar is described in ancient works on botany as the oldest tree in the world. It was admired by the Israelites who brought it to the land to build the first and the second temples in Jerusalem. Historical sources report that the famous cedar forests were beginning to disappear at the time of Justinian in the 6th century AD. History. The Kadisha Valley's many natural caves have been used as shelters and for burials back as far as the Paleolithic period. The Aassi Hauka in particular, near Hawka, Lebanon, has yielded archaeological items indicating Paleolithic, Roman, and medieval periods of use. Since the early centuries of Christianity, the Holy Valley has served as a refuge for those in search of solitude. Historians believe that the Kadisha Valley has had monastic communities continuously since the earliest years of Christianity. It was also at times a destination for Muslim mystics or Sufis, who also visited it for meditation and solitude. Early Christian communities fleeing persecution found refuge in the Kadisha. Among these groups were the Jacobites, Melkites, Nestorians, Armenians, and even Ethiopians. The Maronites, however, are the dominant Christian group in the valley. For the late 7th century, Maronites fled to the valley from their original areas of settlement in the Levante. At the time, they feared persecution from the Jacobites, who were non-Chalcedonian, and who persecuted Chalcedonian Maronites, and from Islamic attacks. Maronite settlement intensified in the 10th century following the destruction of the monastery of St. Maron. The Maronite monks established the new center at Canubin, in the heart of the Kadisha, and monasteries quickly spread over the surrounding hills. Early Maronite settlement in the valley combined both community and eremitic life. The Mameluke sultans Baybars and Kalaun led campaigns in 1268 and 1283, respectively, against the fortress caves, monasteries, and the surrounding villages. Despite these attacks, the Deir Canubin monastery was to become the seat of the Maronite patriarch in the 15th century and to remain so for 500 years. years. In the 17th century, the Maronite monks' reputation for piety was such that many European poets, historians, geographers, politicians, and clergy visited and even settled in the valley. The first printing press in the Middle East was built in 1610 at the monastery of Qadisha in the Kadisha Valley. It used Syriac characters. Also, this printing press was the first to print in Arabic language. The Kadisha mummies, 8 well-preserved natural mummies of Maronite villages dating back to around 1283 AD, were uncovered by a team of speleologists in the Kadisha Valley in 1991. These were found in the Asil Hadith cave along with a wealth of artifacts. World Heritage Site. In 1998, UNESCO added the valley to the list of World Heritage Sites because of its importance as the site of some of the earliest Christian monastic settlements in the world, and its continued example of early Christian faith. Christian monasticism in the valley. The Kadisha Valley is the site of some of the most ancient Christian monastic communities of the Middle East, the valley's natural caves being comfortless, scattered, and difficult to access, provided monks and hermits sufficiently isolated and inhospitable conditions to live out Christian solitude, contemplation, and devotion. Many of the caves and irregularities in the cliff sides were adapted to serve as individual dwellings, chapels, and monasteries, and such buildings were further carved out of the cliff faces of the valley. Some have interiors covered with frescoes and facades. Around the caves there are terraced fields made by the hermits for growing grain, grapes, and olives. While there are numerous monasteries in the valley, there are several main monastic complexes. The Qanubin Monastery. The Qanubin Monastery is on the northeast side of the Kadisha Valley. It is the oldest of the Maronite monasteries, although its foundation is often attributed to the Emperor Theodosius the Great in 375 AD. It is more likely that it was established by a disciple of St. Theodosius the Cenobite. For the most part it is cut into the rock cliffside, monastic cells, church, cloister, and accommodation for travelers. Qanubin used to be the see of the Maronite Patriarch. The monastery of St. Anthony of Qadisha. The monastery of Qadisha sits on the opposite flank of the Kadisha from Qanubin Monastery. Tradition has its foundation in the 4th century by St. Hilarion in honor of the Egyptian anchorite, St. Anthony the Great, though the earliest documentary records date back only to around 1000 AD. It was destroyed in the 16th century but quickly restored. It comprises a corridor, meeting room, and chapel, with a mill and a number of hermitages cut into the rock nearby. The monastery of Our Lady of Hawker, Sede Hawker, is situated at an altitude of 1,150 meters between Qanubin and Qadisha monasteries, at the base of an enormous cave. It was founded in the late 13th century by villages from Hawker. The hermitage appears to have been located on a wide platform at mid-level, where there is a water reservoir fed by channels. The upper level, only accessible by ladder, is a cave some 47 meters long, where the wealth of medieval pottery and arrowheads that have been found suggests its use as a refuge. Traces of fortifications have also been found in the Aassi Hauka at 1,170 meters altitude. Archaeological finds show that this cave was in use in Paleolithic, Roman, and medieval times. The monastery of Marsarchus. The monastery of Marsarchus, also called Ras al-Nahr, overlooks Eden, Farshga, Abain, and Hadith el-Jabba. Given its exceptional location overlooking the valley at an altitude of 1,500 meters, the monastery is called the Watchful Eye of Kadisha. It is dedicated to Saints Sarkis and Bacchus. The name Ras al-Nahr means the top of the river, as it is in the vicinity of the Mar Sarkis source, the main contributor to the Qadisha River, which joins the Canubin River in the valley. The first church of Saints Sarkis and Bacchus was built in the mid-8th century A.D. on the ruins of a Canaanite temple dedicated to a god of agriculture. Next to it, another church dedicated to Our Lady was constructed in 1198 A.D. Several buildings were added from 1404 till 1690, when Patriarch Stephen Durahi restored part of the buildings. The monastery of Mar Lisha St. Elisha, mentioned first in the 14th century, is shared by two communities, a Maronite solitary order and a barefoot Carmelite order. It consists of 3 or 4 small cells, a refectory, and some offices. The communal church includes 4 chapels cut into the rock face. Other monasteries. Other monastic establishments in the Kadisha of the monastery of Mar Gergis, with the chapel of Mar Chalita, the monastery of Mar Yohanna, the monastery of Mar Aban, with the hermitage of Mar Sarkis, and the monastery of Mar Tmora Eden. There is another group of monasteries in the adjoining Kadisha Valley. These were founded by Ethiopian Monophysite monks expelled from the neighboring town of Edin and occupied by them before the communities scattered elsewhere. They include the Hermitage monastery complexes of Deir es-Salab, Mar Antonios, Mar Samani, and Mar Asiya, along with the isolated chapels of Mar Bona and Mar Shmuna. Towns, villages, and monasteries. In Becharre district, Becharre, Daman, Bain, Tuatsa, Hazroun, Bizaun, Bekarkasha, Bqa Kafra, Risate, Hadshit, Uza, Hadith Monastery of Canubin, Monastery of Horka, Monastery of Mar Elisha in Zgharta district, Arbe Kaurshia, Eden, Farshga, Horka, Ainturin, Serial, El Fradas Mazrat, Nnahi, Beit Ballet, Monastery of Kaurshia, Monastery of Mar Sarkis Ras al-Nahr, Map.